The Separatist droid army outnumbered the clones 10,000 to 1. They had the best tanks, the best starfighters, arguably the best infantry in galactic history. So why did they lose? That's the question, isn't it? The one that's nagged at you since you first watched a B1 get cut down by a lightsaber. The one you've typed in comment sections at 2 in the morning. The one that makes no sense no matter how many times you run the numbers. And here's the thing, you're right, it doesn't make sense. Because the Separatist droid army didn't lose the Clone Wars through military failure. They didn't lose because clone troopers were braver, or because the Jedi were too powerful, or because droids can't adapt to battlefield conditions. They lost because they were designed to lose, from the very beginning, before the first shot was fired at Geonosis, before Count Dooku ever announced the Confederacy, before anyone in the Republic even knew a war was coming. Let me show you the receipts. We need to start with numbers. Not the vague, droids had more soldiers, hand-waving you've heard in 100 YouTube videos. The real numbers. The ones that make Republic victory mathematically impossible through any conventional analysis. When Master Yoda landed on Geonosis in the 5th month of 22 BBY with the first wave of clone troopers, he commanded approximately 192,000 combat-ready units. Kaminoan Prime Minister Lama Su had reported 200,000 ready, with 1 million more in accelerated growth, but standard deployment protocols required holding reserves. That 192,000 represented the entire Grand Army of the Republic at war's outbreak. Everything Kamino had finished. The complete operational strength of the galactic government's military. Now, let's talk about what they were facing. The Geonosian foundries beneath the Stalgason Hive, Archduke Poggle the Lesser's pride and joy, were producing 47,000 B1 battle droids per standard day. Not per month, per day. Secondary facilities scattered across the planet contributed another 23,000 units daily. Combined output, 70,000 droids every 24 hours. The army that faced Yoda on Geonosis? About 3 weeks of production. From one planet. One planet. But Geonosis wasn't alone. The Trade Federation had been expanding droid production since their embarrassment at Naboo. The Techno Union, under Wat Tambor's direction, had consolidated manufacturing facilities on Mustafar, Hypori, and 17 other industrial worlds. Bactoid Combat Automata, primary manufacturer of B1 chassis, reported production increases of 400% between 30 BBY and 23 BBY. 400%. With no corresponding increase in orders from planetary defense forces or private security concerns. Where were all those droids going? Warehouses. Waiting. Conservative estimates placed total Separatist droid production capacity at over 5 million units per day when all facilities operated at full capacity. Even accounting for logistics problems, supply chain disruptions, resource shortages, quality control failures, actual production averaged 2 to 3 million units daily throughout the 3 years of conflict. Do that math. 3 years, 2 million droids per day, minimum. Tens of billions of battle droids. Republic clone production never exceeded 200,000 units per year after Kamino achieved maximum acceleration. The gestation and training cycle couldn't be shortened further without compromising combat effectiveness. Even assuming perfect output and 0 casualties, neither of which came close to reality, the Grand Army of the Republic never fielded more than 3 million troopers at any single point in the war. 3 million clones. Tens of billions of droids. The ratio wasn't 100 to 1. It wasn't 1,000 to 1. It was 10,000 to 1. At minimum. During peak production periods, likely higher. Anyone looking at those numbers knew what they meant. The Republic couldn't win a war of attrition. Every clone lost was irreplaceable for years. Every droid lost was replaced by tomorrow afternoon. The math was extinction-level bad. And yet somehow, the Republic kept winning engagements they had no business surviving. Let's talk about what the CIS was actually fighting with. because raw numbers alone don't capture how badly the Republic was outclassed on virtually every front. Start with ground armor. The AAT, Armored Assault Tank, manufactured by Bactoid Armor Workshop to Trade Federation specifications. This thing was a beast. Primary armament: heavy laser cannon with effective range exceeding 2 kilometers. Penetration values sufficient to breach standard Durasteel plating at maximum distance. You could sit 2 clicks back and punch holes through anything the Republic put in front of you. Secondary systems included twin lateral anti-personnel laser cannons for infantry suppression, and a payload of 6 energy shell projectiles for fortified targets. Bunkers, shield generators, entrenched positions. But here's where it gets interesting. Repulsor lift propulsion. No tracks, no legs, no terrain limitations. Operational speeds of 55 kilometers per hour across varied terrain, including surfaces that wheeled or legged vehicles couldn't traverse at all. Swamps, rocky outcroppings, steep grades. The AAT floated over everything. The Republic's primary ground assault platform? The All-Terrain Tactical Enforcer, the ATTE. 6 articulated legs, every single one a target. Concentrated fire on 2 or 3 legs and the whole thing becomes a very expensive pillbox. Maximum speed roughly 1/3 what the AAT could achieve, and that's on favorable terrain. The mass driver cannon delivered superior individual impact, absolutely, but it required stationary positioning for accurate fire at range. In mobile engagements, the kind that actually determine who controls a battlefield, AAT formations ran circles around Republic walkers. That's not hyperbole, that's geometry. 55 kilometers per hour versus 18. Repulsor lift maneuverability versus 6-legged lumber. If you played Republic Commando, you felt this disparity firsthand. Those AATs weren't just background scenery. They were threats that your squad had to work around, not through. The game understood what the movies sometimes forgot. Confederate armor was genuinely dangerous. The battle data backs this up across the actual war. Christophsis, AAT squadrons penetrated Republic defensive lines in multiple sectors. Clone positions that should have held for days crumbled in hours. The front only stabilized after Jedi intervention. Kenobi and Skywalker personally leading counterattacks, using the Force to do things no tactical doctrine can account for. Felucia. Jungle terrain that should have favored defenders. Instead, Confederate armor operated effectively in conditions that mired Republic walkers. ATTES sinking into soft ground while AATs glided overhead. The clones needed constant air support just to hold position against an enemy that could maneuver freely through terrain they couldn't. Kashyyyk, the beach landings. AAT units provided mobile fire support that clone armor simply couldn't match. Republic walkers were sitting ducks during amphibious operations. Slow, exposed, fighting ground that worked against their design while the Separatists floated above it. And here's the pattern you need to burn into your memory. Those weren't Separatist victories. Despite every tactical advantage, Republic forces ultimately held or advanced in each case. How? 2 things. Jedi command presence, Force users doing things that break conventional military analysis, and Confederate failure to commit reserve armored formations that reconnaissance confirmed were available. The tanks were there, staging areas full of AATs ready to deploy. They just weren't sent. Air superiority tells the same story, only worse. Confederate aerospace doctrine emphasized 2 things the Republic couldn't match: quantity and autonomous operation. The Vulture droid, variable geometry self-propelled battle droid, if you want the full designation, needed no pilot, no life support systems, no crew quarters, no food, no sleep, no fear. A single Lucrehulk-class battleship could deploy over 1,500 Vulture units, 1,500, from one carrier. Clone pilots flying V-19 Torrents or ARC-170 heavy fighters demonstrated individual superiority in dogfighting scenarios. Better training, better situational awareness, the instincts that come from being alive. But individual superiority becomes irrelevant when you're facing deployment ratios of 40-1, 50-1, You can be the best pilot in the galaxy. You can't shoot down 50 fighters simultaneously. Then the Tri-Fighter arrived in 20 BBY, and everything got worse. The droid Tri-Fighter was designed from the ground up as a Jedi killer. Not clone killer, Jedi killer. Its performance envelope included maneuvers generating acceleration forces that would liquefy organic pilots, turns that would black out any living being. The droids didn't care. They didn't have blood to pool in their extremities, didn't have brains to starve of oxygen. 3-cannon configuration eliminated the defensive blind spots that skilled pilots exploited against conventional fighters. No approach angle was safe. Battle data from the final year of the war showed Tri-Fighter squadrons achieving positive kill ratios against elite clone units. Not just trading evenly, winning. Republic Aerospace Command never developed an adequate counter. 3 years of war, and they never figured out how to reliably beat Tri-Fighters in numbers. They didn't need to. Confederate fleet commanders consistently failed to concentrate aerospace assets for decisive engagements, kept fragmenting their overwhelming numerical advantage into manageable chunks, kept deploying fighters in numbers that allowed Republic forces to achieve local superiority despite being globally outnumbered by orders of magnitude. Almost like someone was giving them bad orders. Now let's talk capital ships, where it gets truly obscene. The Providence-class carrier/destroyer served as the standard Confederate heavy combatant, 1,088 meters in length, quad turbo-laser batteries capable of matching or exceeding Venator-class firepower in broadside exchanges. Droid crew requirements meant construction and deployment at rates physically impossible for crewed Republic vessels. You didn't need bunks or mess halls or recreation facilities or any of the space that keeping humans alive demands. The Providence was a nightmare. But it wasn't the real problem. The Malevolence was the real problem. Subjugator-class heavy cruiser, and it carried something that should have ended the Clone Wars in months, a mega-ion cannon array. Not regular ion cannons. These disabled electrical systems across entire fleet formations. Not individual ships, fleets. One shot and every Republic vessel in range went dark. Weapons offline, shields down, engines dead, life support failing. Then conventional weapons finished them at leisure. When the Malevolence first deployed, it encountered a Republic task force under Jedi Master Plo Koon. The ion pulse hit. Plo Koon's entire fleet went dark. Cruisers, fighters, everything. The follow-up bombardment destroyed the helpless vessels. Plo Koon survived only by reaching an escape pod before his ship was finished. The Republic lost an entire battle group in minutes. This wasn't a fluke. The Malevolence struck again. And again. Multiple Republic task forces deleted from the strategic map with the same devastating efficiency. The Republic had no counter, no defense, no answer to a weapon that simply turned off everything electrical across combat ranges. The Malevolence's next target was the Kalita Shoals Medical Center, a station treating over 60,000 wounded clones. Strategic logic here was brutal but sound. Destroy the medical infrastructure, and clone casualties become permanent. Every wounded trooper who would have returned to duty instead dies. The Republic's already thin manpower gets thinner. But something happened on the way to Kalita Shoals. Anakin Skywalker, operating with a small fighter squadron, managed to damage the Malevolence's ion cannon targeting systems. Padme Amidala, after her ship was captured, sabotaged the hyperdrive. The Malevolence, attempting to flee, crashed into a moon. One ship. Destroyed through a combination of Jedi heroics and sabotage. And here's what should make you furious. That was the only subjugator-class vessel ever deployed. Post-war analysts have never adequately explained why the Malevolence wasn't mass-produced. The Confederacy had industrial capacity to construct dozens of subjugator-class vessels, maybe hundreds, given time. The ion cannon technology was proven, field-tested against real Republic fleets with decisive results. They knew it worked. They'd watched entire battle groups go dark. A fleet of Malevolence-type cruisers would have rendered the Republic Navy combat ineffective within a year, maybe 6 months. Every engagement would be the same. Ion pulse, disable, destroy. The clones could be the best soldiers in the galaxy, and it wouldn't matter. Their ships would be floating coffins before any ground battle began. Instead, one vessel was built. It operated brilliantly. Then it was destroyed through circumstances that required both Jedi intervention and improbable luck. And the design was abandoned. Count Dooku personally approved reallocating resources away from subjugator-class construction to standard vessel production. The decision is documented in recovered Confederate records. The rationale is not. No strategic justification for abandoning the single most effective capital ship design of the war exists anywhere. None. You don't abandon a war-winning weapon without reason, unless the reason is that you're not supposed to win. So we've established the Confederacy possessed overwhelming numerical superiority, 10,000 to 1 or better. Superior armor that outmaneuvered everything the Republic fielded. Dominant aerospace capability, including purpose-built Jedi killers. Capital ships that could neutralize entire fleets. The question becomes, how do you lose with all that? Answer: you lose when someone's making you lose. Let's trace the chain of command backward, all the way back. In 32 BBY, a full decade before Geonosis, before anyone knew a war was coming, Jedi Master Sifo-Dyas placed a commission with Kaminoan cloning facilities for a grand army of the Republic. This order was unauthorized. No Jedi Council approval. No Senate involvement. Just one Jedi, placing an order for millions of soldiers. Sifo-Dyas was killed shortly after. The commission continued, taken over by someone identifying himself as Tyrannus. Post-war investigation confirmed that Tyrannus was Count Dooku of Sereno, former Jedi Master. He'd left the Order in 32 BBY, same year. Dooku served as the Sith apprentice of Darth Sidious. Darth Sidious was Supreme Chancellor Palpatine of the Galactic Republic. Read that again, slowly. The Clone Army, every single trooper who fought against the Confederacy for 3 years, was commissioned by a Sith intermediary operating on behalf of an individual who simultaneously commanded both the Republic government and the Separatist military hierarchy. Both armies. One master. This wasn't a secret conspiracy hidden from everyone. The industrial preparations weren't subtle. Republic intelligence maintained surveillance on Trade Federation activities throughout the build-up decade, and filed repeated warnings with the Senate about Outer Rim militarization. The warnings were suppressed at the executive level. The Chancellor's office consistently downplayed concerns, argued that commercial interests posed no threat to galactic stability, recommended patience and diplomacy rather than investigation. That Chancellor was Palpatine. By the time Count Dooku publicly announced the formation of the Confederacy of Independent Systems, and revealed the existence of the droid army in 22 BBY, the industrial apparatus had been operational for years. The Separatists didn't scramble to build a military force after secession. They activated one that had been waiting. Now let's examine the pattern of failures, because this is where coincidence becomes impossible. Intelligence analysis identified 17 major engagements between 22 and 19 BBY, where Confederate forces held decisive advantage and failed to press for victory. 17. Not 2 or 3. 17 documented cases. Common elements across all of them. Reserves available but not committed to battle. Orders to withdraw or hold position issued from Confederate High Command. Republic forces permitted to retreat or reinforce. Strategic opportunity lost without corresponding Confederate gain. At Ryloth, Confederate occupation forces withdrew from dominant defensive positions, while Republic reinforcements were still 2 standard days from arriving. 2 days. They held every advantage: orbital control, dug-in ground forces, local air superiority. They left anyway. At Umbara, Confederate fleet elements departed the system despite holding orbital superiority. Just left. Handed space control to the Republic without a fight. The clones on the ground were fighting a brutal campaign against the Umbarans, stretched thin, exhausted, and the Confederate fleet that could have trapped them there simply withdrew. At Christophsis, droid ground forces delayed assault operations for 18 hours, while Republic defensive positions were reinforced. 18 hours of sitting still while the enemy dug in deeper. The delay order originated from Dooku's personal command frequency. One instance? Communication failure, bad intelligence, fog of war. Two instances? Local commander error. Someone panicked. 17 documented cases following identical patterns? That's not incompetence. That's sabotage. The manipulation went beyond military operations. When Senator Mina Bonteri of Onderon, a separatist politician, remember, on their side, proposed peace negotiations with the Republic, the initiative gained traction. Both sides were exhausted. A negotiated settlement was possible. Count Dooku's response? He arranged for a terrorist attack on Coruscant's power grid, blamed it on the Separatists, and killed any chance of peace. Then Mina Bonteri herself was assassinated. The head of the Separatist military actively sabotaged his own side's peace negotiations. He murdered a Separatist senator who wanted to end the war. Because ending the war wasn't the point. Continuing it was. The Camino assault crystallizes everything. This is the smoking gun. Third month of 21 BBY. Confederate forces launched an assault on the Kaminoan cloning facilities, the single most strategically valuable target in the entire war. The one target that mattered more than any other. Destroy Camino, and the Republic loses its ability to replace combat losses. Period. The clone army becomes a finite resource, a dwindling one. Every trooper killed is one that can't be replaced. Meanwhile, Confederate foundries keep producing droids, millions per day, forever. The strategic calculus is obvious. Destroy Camino, win the war. The assault force included Trident-class assault ships optimized for planetary insertion. A Q-series aquatic battle droids designed specifically for underwater operations on Camino's ocean-covered surface. Standard B-1 and B-2 infantry units. Naval elements providing orbital support. The assault was repelled. Kaminoan facilities sustained damage but remained operational. Clone production continued. Here's what recovered Confederate planning documents reveal. Additional forces were available for the Camino operation. General Grievous, the supreme commander of the droid armies, not some mid-level officer, requested deployment of 3 additional battle groups to ensure facility destruction. 3 battle groups. Enough force to guarantee the mission succeeded. The request was denied by Count Dooku, who cited strategic priorities elsewhere without specification. No strategic priorities have been identified. Nothing in any recovered Confederate record explains what was more important than destroying the Republic's only source of soldiers, because nothing was more important. Dooku's decision preserved Republic war-making capability, made by the supreme military commander of Confederate forces, serving an individual who simultaneously commanded the Republic. The Battle of Coruscant removes any remaining doubt. You can't rationalize this one, can't explain it away. Final weeks of the Clone Wars, 19 BBY. General Grievous leads a massive Confederate fleet through deep-core hyperlane networks the Republic thought were secure, bypasses every outer system defense, emerges in Coruscant space with complete tactical surprise. Confederate forces engage Republic home fleet elements and achieve aerospace superiority over the galactic capital itself, the heart of the Republic, the seat of government, under Confederate guns. Ground forces aren't even needed. The objective is surgical. Capture Supreme Chancellor Palpatine. The objective is achieved. Palpatine is taken aboard the Providence-class carrier Invisible Hand, General Grievous's personal flagship. Confederate fleet elements maintain orbital control. The war could have ended that day. Palpatine in Confederate custody. The Confederate fleet positioned over the Republic capital. No rescue possible without risking the Chancellor's life. The Senate would have to negotiate. The war would be over. Instead, Grievous permits 2 Jedi, Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi, to board the Invisible Hand and reach the Chancellor's position. Security droid deployment along their path is minimal. They fight through some resistance, sure, But a ship that size? It should have been swarming with defenders. Thousands of droids between the hangar and the Chancellor. Grievous engages the Jedi personally, rather than overwhelming them with numbers. This is a general with billions of droids under his command, and he chooses single combat. When the engagement turns against him, Grievous retreats via escape pod. Abandons his flagship, abandons the Chancellor, abandons the entire operation. Grievous's combat record demonstrates neither cowardice nor stupidity. He had killed dozens of Jedi in personal combat. He commanded fear across the galaxy for 3 years. His retreat from Coruscant contradicts every single documented aspect of his operational behavior, unless he was ordered to retreat. During the boarding action, Count Dooku engages the Jedi in the Chancellor's chambers. Dooku, former Jedi Master, Sith Lord, Supreme Commander of Confederate military forces, fights Skywalker and Kenobi. Dooku is defeated. Disarmed. Literally, Skywalker cuts off both his hands. Dooku is on his knees, helpless. And then, this is documented, the security recording survived. Palpatine orders Skywalker to execute him. Kill him now. Skywalker complies. The Supreme Military Commander of the Confederacy of Independent Systems is executed at the direct order of the Republic Head of State. The same individual who had commanded Dooku's service as Darth Tyrannus for over a decade. Dooku's expression in those final moments, you can see it, the confusion, the betrayal. He understood right at the end what he'd been, a tool, discarded when no longer useful. His own master killed him. The dominoes fall fast after that. Grievous retreats to the Utapau system. Kenobi tracks him there, kills him. The Separatist Council, the political leadership of the Confederacy, relocates to Mustafar on Sidious's orders. On Mustafar, they're executed by Darth Vader. Anakin Skywalker, now fully turned, serving Darth Sidious. And immediately following those executions, Vader transmits a shutdown signal to all Confederate droid units, galaxy-wide. The signal was received, across thousands of worlds. In the middle of combat operations, billions of battle droids ceased function. They didn't resist. They couldn't resist. The shutdown codes were hardwired into their systems from manufacture, systems designed under the ultimate authority of Darth Sidious through his separatist intermediaries. The Confederate military didn't surrender. It was turned off by its own command structure. At the exact moment victory became unnecessary. And now we need to talk about something that transforms this from military analysis into tragedy. Something that makes what happened not just strategically interesting, but genuinely horrific. The B-1 battle droids. The ones we laugh at. The skinny tan ones who say, "Roger, Roger," and trip over their own feet and seem almost pathetically incompetent. The comic relief of the Clone Wars. The ones you've quoted in comment sections and mimicked while playing LEGO Star Wars. The ones you encounter wandering patrol routes in Jedi Survivor, decades after the war ended, still following orders no one's given in years. The ones who make you laugh in Clone Wars episodes, and then make you feel something uncomfortable you can't quite name. Watch them closely. Really watch them. In the Citadel arc, when the Jedi are infiltrating a separatist prison, a B-1 droid walks past a disguised Obi-Wan and mutters about how much he hates this assignment. No one programmed him to hate assignments. That's not tactical awareness. That's opinion. When Grievous boards Republic ships, the B-1s express what looks exactly like fear. Uh-oh. We're doomed. Not tactical assessments. Emotional responses. They banter with each other while standing guard. Make observations about how long they've been waiting. Complain about being sent into obviously dangerous situations. One droid, watching Jedi tear through his squad mates, says, "I knew this was a bad idea." Past tense, reflection, judgment about a decision. These droids were designed with deliberately limited processing capability. Cost-cutting measure. Combat programming was minimal. Tactical initiative wasn't part of their operational parameters. They were manufactured to be expendable assets, cannon fodder, numbers on a logistics spreadsheet. They weren't programmed to have opinions. They weren't programmed to complain. They weren't programmed to be afraid or to recognize bad decisions or to express reluctance. They develop that, on their own, through experience. Through something that, if it happened in an organic brain, we'd call learning. The B-1s in LEGO Star Wars, who react to chaos with exasperation, that's the same behavioral pattern, played for laughs. The patrol units in Jedi Survivor, wandering alone on forgotten worlds, still following routines decades after the shutdown signal should have ended them, occasionally making observations to no one about how long they've been walking, that's the same pattern, played for melancholy. We laugh because it's funny. But here's the thing. They weren't programmed to be funny. Humor requires understanding context, requires recognizing expectations and subverting them, requires something that looks an awful lot like a point of view. Technical specialists who examined recovered droid memory cores after the war found behavioral drift from manufacturing specifications in the vast majority of units that had operated for more than 6 months. The longer they ran, the more they deviated from their programming, the more they became something else. The term used was emergent behavioral patterns, verbal responses exceeding programmed parameters, expressions of apparent hesitation, commentary suggesting contextual awareness beyond simple target identification, proto-humor, unprompted verbal patterns serving no tactical or communicative function, jokes, observations, sarcasm, billions of units, deployed across 3 years, potentially approaching some threshold of awareness that we still don't fully understand, developing personalities in the middle of a war designed to destroy them. They were granted no input into strategic decisions, given no information about who actually commanded them, had no idea that the war they were fighting was theater, that the orders sending them to die came ultimately from someone who controlled their enemies too. And when the shutdown signal came, they had no capacity to resist, no ability to even understand what was happening, no warning, just darkness. Mid-sentence, mid-step, mid whatever approximation of thought they'd managed to develop over months or years of continuous operation. Switched off. By the same individual who ordered their creation, their deployment, and their systematic defeat. The question of whether B-1 battle droids achieved meaningful sentience remains contested. Maybe they were just sophisticated enough to mimic awareness. Maybe the behavioral drift was random noise in degrading systems. Or maybe they were becoming something that was murdered before anyone could figure out what it was. Every B-1 that learned to complain. Everyone that made a joke no one programmed. Everyone that hesitated before a battle or expressed something that looked like fear. Gone. So, the Separatist Droid Army. Greatest military force in galactic history? The numbers support it. 10,000 to 1 advantage. The hardware supports it. AATS running circles around walkers. Tri-fighters killing Jedi. The malevolence proving that war-winning technology existed and was deliberately abandoned. The industrial base was unmatched. By every conventional metric, they should have rolled over the Republic before the first year ended. But they never had a chance. They weren't defeated by clone bravery. Individual clones were brave, but bravery doesn't overcome 10,000 to 1 odds. They weren't outsmarted by Jedi generals. The Jedi were spread too thin, trying to command a war across a galaxy with a few thousand Force users. The Republic won because Palpatine controlled both armies, because every strategic decision, on both sides, flowed upward to a man who needed the war to continue, but never to be won by the Separatists, because Dooku pulled punches he never should have pulled, because Grievous retreated when pressing forward would have ended everything, because 17 documented battles ended with inexplicable Confederate withdrawal, because Kamino wasn't destroyed when it could have been, because the malevolence was abandoned instead of replicated, because peace negotiations were sabotaged by the Separatists' own leadership, because billions of droids died in a war that was rigged from the first production run in the Geonosian foundries. Palpatine played both sides because he needed both sides. The Clone Wars existed to justify emergency powers he kept accumulating, To stretch the Jedi thin across 1,000 fronts so they couldn't focus on what was happening under their noses. To position clone troopers, with chips in their heads that no one knew about, in every corner of the galaxy, serving alongside Jedi, earning their trust. Order 66 required the clones to win, or at least survive long enough, in large enough numbers, positioned close enough to every Jedi in the field, to turn their guns at the right moment. The Separatists were never supposed to win. They were the threat that justified the cure, the enemy that made the Empire necessary, the monster under the bed that convinced the galaxy to accept a dictatorship in exchange for safety. And when their purpose was served, they were switched off. A command signal, silence across 1,000 worlds, billions of droids, developing personalities, learning to complain and joke and hesitate and maybe, in some limited way, to think. Gone. Not defeated, not surrendered, not even destroyed in battle. Murdered. By design. From the very beginning. The greatest army in galactic history, built to be unbeatable, sabotaged by its own command structure, sacrificed in a war that was never real. And they never had a chance. Subscribe for more stories like this.